This week in the astrology, we have one of the most action-packed weeks of the whole year, and that's because we start the week off with the Mercury Cazimi. Then we will have Venus retrogress back into Pisces. Venus will then conjoin Neptune for the second time during her retrograde. We will have a partial solar eclipse in Aries, and then Mercury will retrogress back into Pisces and also conjoin Neptune. And then we end the week with a banger, and that's Neptune moving into Aries. And this is a really, really big deal. This is a very big transit. It's not something that we're going to be able to talk about all the way in this video. And of course, I will have a Neptune and Aries video, so subscribe if you haven't seen that already. But this week's a big deal, so let's just go ahead and get started talking about it. Welcome back to the Astrology Report. My name is Cam White. We are talking about March 24th through March 30th of 2025. And like I said in the intro, this is a pretty big week. And we have a lot going on, and I have a little bit of mixed feelings about everything, to be honest with you. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. So number one, we're starting the week off with the moon ingressing into Aquarius. And before it moves into Aquarius, it's going to be in Capricorn. It'll make a sextile to Neptune. It's then going to ingress into Aquarius. Then the moon is going to sextile Venus and then conjoin Pluto. And of course, we start the week off with the Mercury Cazimi. Maybe I should just open up with this. We're in between eclipses. Venus is retrograde. Mercury's retrograde. Everything is like, I personally feel super off. Like, I actually recorded this weekly a couple days ago, and I just didn't like it. I was in a very different mindset then. I feel much better now. But, you know, when it comes to a lot of, I've had a very specific line of thinking over the past few months with how I've gone about my weekly horoscopes and stuff like that. And it's for a reason. I'm still there. I look at this week as an opportunity to, I don't know how to say this. Like, this is kind of like our last chance, last stop. Over on my website for members, I did the April game plan video, and I kind of talked about how a lot of Venus being retrograde in Pisces, going from Aries into Pisces, is like leaving them at the altar. And I think that's a very funny way of looking at this time. And something I think a lot about this week is, with everything going from Aries into Pisces, is like, we have an opportunity to make last minute decisions. We have an opportunity to make last minute changes. Like, if you haven't made the changes you want in the new year, if you haven't made the changes during the Venus retrograde that you wanted, like, I've been using this hand motion a lot to describe this time, because it's a lot of in and out and in and out. And you kind of have to like acknowledge that, like, you know, it's not just as simply as like, oh, we just wake up and then boom, all of a sudden that's just how things are. And so I just kind of look at Monday with the Mercury Cazimi, because, like, okay, there's like the typical Mercury retrograde stuff, which is number one, a Mercury retrograde Cazimi. And again, people really get hung up on this word Cazimi. Actually, I had a really good comment, and someone was like, what's the difference between a conjunction and a Cazimi? A conjunction is when any two bodies, like whether it's a planet or a moon or whatever, conjoin, they are together in the sky. A Cazimi is specifically related to the sun. And Cazimi pretty much means heart of the sun, and that's where that term comes from. And all it just really means is, like, the sun is a pinpoint, like, center for all planetary cycles. And so when a planet conjoins the sun, in essence, it is restarting that cycle. This is stuff we're going to be talking about over on my planets course. If you aren't a member already on the Learn Astrology tier, we're going over all the planets. This is stuff that we're going to be covering. Make sure you sign up. But on a surface level, Mercury retrograde Cazimi is understanding what the problem was, and then therefore understanding what the solution is moving forward. And it's kind of like when the Mercury retrograde gradeness kind of like simmers down a little bit. And I just really look at Monday as an opportunity to really have that light bulb moment of, what do I need to do? What do I need to change? Who do I need to become in order to make those changes, right? And I would really stress that Monday has a really deep opportunity to learn and understand things, because when Mercury goes back into Pisces, we're going to go back to this era of like not understanding things. And for a reason, like that's good. It's just one of the things of, if you struggle with trusting your gut and trusting your intuition, and if you need logical answers, Monday's all you've got. After that, you're going to have to just wing it and figure it out. Now, yes, the moon will go into Aquarius, and it's going to sextile Venus and conjoin Pluto. And you know, actually, let me just say, the moon will be in Capricorn. It's going to sextile Neptune. That's really good for creating a vision, and being a little bit, having detachment around that vision. And then, of course, the moon goes into Aquarius. It's sextiling Venus retrograde. It's like you're with people, but you don't like the reason why you're with people. But I just really want to emphasize the Mercury Cazimi. There is a light bulb moment of understanding, and it may not be the answer or the solution that you're looking for, or that you expect, or that you want to hear. And I think Monday kicks us off into a very interesting week in terms of, okay, here's the information. What are you going to do with it now? And like I've been saying, so much of what's going on right now is stuff is going to change with or without your consent. And I think there's an opportunity to like choose into this on Monday. So then we get to Tuesday. The moon, while it's in Aquarius, is going to make a trine to Jupiter. And then we'll have Mercury, as it's retrograde, as a highlight, make a sextile to Pluto. Look, the moon in Aquarius trining Jupiter in Gemini. Hooray! Everyone's having a good time. I love the moon. I love moon trining Jupiter. It's great. I want to talk about Mercury retrograde sextiling Pluto because it is a highlight of the week. However, it's not that big of a deal usually. But the thing I wrote down was almost kind of like more impactful to me. And the thing I wrote down for like Mercury being retrograde sextiling Pluto is like there's power in re-understanding, and there is like power in changing your mind. Does that make sense? Like oftentimes in life we feel really committed to the decisions that we made, and there's like the sunk cost fallacy. And there's a lot of like, I just went through that with like, if you've been hearing what I've been going through, which is like, last year I had this whole website built and it just became problem after problem after problem after problem after problem. And it just got to a point where it was costing me more to like keep fixing it when I could just like start all over. And there was a little bit of that sunk cost fallacy issue I had for just a brief moment. I was like, fuck it, we'll just do it. And it's like, I'm so glad I did that. I wish I would have done it earlier, to be honest with you. But there's power in re-understanding your situation. There's power in replanning and what it looks like to move forward again. Because I think the other thing that I've been trying to emphasize is like, yes, this Mercury retrograde is a big deal. Yes, this Venus retrograde is a big deal. But what these planets are doing is looking at Aries, the house of Aries, and going, oh shit, we need to change this up for Saturn and Neptune. Like that's what this is to me. Like this isn't like it's just a Venus retrograde time. It's like, there's two very personal bodies going into the house of Aries. It's like, for example, if you've ever like, let's say thrown a pop-up event and you have a studio space, a rental space, and you're told it's supposed to look one way for this event. And then you get there and it's not ready. It's not what you were told. It's way different from that. So then you got to go, okay, how do we change this in order to get ready for the big party? That's what's going on right now. And I look at the Mercury retrograde as like, you might have to call an audible. For example, there was one time I was DJing a wedding. It was June in Breckenridge. So it's summer. We're in Breckenridge. It starts snowing outside. And if you've ever dealt with a bride before, they're really committed to what they want for a good reason. They spent a lot of money on this. And I mean, we're getting drenched. It is just like, this is not, it's like not little. It's like, oh shit. Like it's kind of coming down and she is just in it. Like watching her, like going through the vows, and everyone, there's like this big feeling of like, are we gonna go inside? Because this is getting crazy. And she just fucking, like in the middle of her saying vows, she just books it and runs, and everyone starts running with her. We move inside, and they changed the whole inside of this venue. Beautiful venue. They changed this whole inside of this venue for the ceremony, and it was gorgeous. And it was just one of those things of like, I'm so like, everyone's like, thank God this woman changed her fucking mind on stuff. Like you don't have to like suffer through these things. You can change your mind. It's okay. Things happen like that. And I look at, for a lot of you guys, like what are the small things that you could just kind of like let go and change your mind on? Because there's power in re-understanding. There's power in replanning. And I think there's just it's just choosing an easier way. And that's how I really look at Tuesdays. I just wonder if Tuesday has an opportunity for things to be really easy. And I know that's crazy sounding, but that's how I want you to look at Tuesday. So then we get to Wednesday, and on Wednesday, the moon, while it's in Aquarius, is going to make a square to Uranus, and then the moon will ingress into Pisces. Look, Wednesday is a little frustrating. The moon is at Aquarius, it's squaring Uranus. Like, there's going to be some sort of social disruption. There's going to be some sort of just like things going a little haywire, and there's not much you could do. What's funny to me about it is the moon being with the like end degrees of Aquarius has that square, things get disrupted. And then the moon goes into Pisces, where it's like, what I like about waning dark moons in Pisces is it's very like, I need to like make a bath. I need to boil some water for my tea. I need to get quiet. I need to be homey. And so there's this feeling on Wednesday of like maybe doing something social, being a little bit more connected, and things just get disrupted. And you're like, this is why I don't go outside. And then the moon goes into Pisces, where we get a little bit more into the sensitive nature. And that brings us to Thursday. Thursday, it's funny because I was expecting Friday's lunar transits are really, really crazy. And it's actually really what I want to talk about following Wednesday. But Thursday, Venus, our two highlights is Venus retrogresses back into Pisces, and then Venus, as she's retrograde, will conjoin Neptune once again, and then we'll have the moon squaring Jupiter all day. The moon or Venus retrogressing back into Pisces is this kind of idea of leaving them at the altar. And why I really like that saying is like, I don't know how literal that is for a lot of you. I doubt it's that literal. It's the understanding what it is that you want. And as Venus is retrograde, which retrogrades are inherently malefic, they're inherently bad. And now that we're post Cazimi and Venus is now moving her way towards Morning Star, and Evening Star Venus is like receiving all this attention, and Morning Star Venus is pursuing something. But now she's in her exalted sign. Now she kind of has access to all of the tools and things that she needs. So what I wrote down was like allowing oneself to enjoy what you want, to want what you want, and to go after what you want. But Venus conjoins Neptune. And this is the kicker to me that like I kind of been thinking a little bit more about this and I don't actually know how to feel about it, to be honest with you, which is kind of like usually I'm like, this is how I feel about it. Because there's one end where it's confusion and overwhelming. Like Venus being retrograde on top of Neptune is very confusing of like, well, what do I want? And it's overwhelmed with what is the truth? Like with Venus conjoining Neptune, it's kind of like, are you seeing everything in a rose-colored glasses in a way that's like, wow, this is what you want, and you know it's what you want, even if you're just hyped up? Or is it, oh, this is what I want, and maybe you're being deceived about it? Or maybe there's this like, there's the astrology says the planet of desire and love and connection is in her favorite sign to be in, but she's retrograde. She doesn't know how to do it, if that makes sense. And she's moving something. It's like I've never seen, what's the show? It's not Love is Blind, Love on the Spectrum. I've never seen a full episode, so maybe I'm stepping out of my lane here, but like I've seen enough to where like it's cute because these people don't have the greatest like intimacy skills, but they still love each other. That's what Venus being retrograde in Pisces reminds me of. It's like, I don't know how to do this, but I know I want to do this. Does that make sense? But as it's on Neptune, my question for you is, are you being deceived and bought and sold into something? Is this actually what it is that you want? Is there a cloud of illusion that is a safety mechanism that inhibits you from keeping the things that you want? Or can you step into a part of yourself that something I think about with Neptune a lot is like vision. And this is kind of like embracing a certain vision of your world, of your life. And that's why I'm just kind of like, I don't really know exactly how I feel about Venus conjoining Neptune with this retrograde. But boy, it's coming in on Thursday, and the moon, while it's in Pisces, doesn't help. It's going to be squaring Jupiter in Gemini the whole day. And so there is this, my emotions are all over the place, and I don't really know what the truth is, and I feel overwhelmed by not having enough answers. Like Jupiter and Gemini is like, you need to just have, Jupiter's all about having faith, but it's in Gemini where it's like, but I feel like I need more answers to have faith. And that's the problem. You don't get that. And so the moon squaring Jupiter is like really going to be that kind of little bit of faith test here. And that brings us to Friday. And Friday is kind of incredible to me because the moon, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lunar transits on Friday. That's a pretty big number. And the moon is going to trine Mars. It will then conjoin Saturn. It will then conjoin the North Node. It will then conjoin Venus as she's retrograde. It will then conjoin Neptune. We're at 29 degrees Pisces right now. Then the moon is going to enter Aries, and then the moon's going to conjoin Mercury retrograde. One of the things I wrote down is like, this is a hell of a lunar day. This is a lot. That's a lot going on in one day. And something I think about with the moon, you know, especially making a bunch of conjunctions. She's mostly conjoining. It's trine Mars, but it's conjoin Saturn, conjoin North Node, conjoin Venus, conjoin Neptune, conjoin Mercury retrograde. These are like very impactful hits that you will kind of see throughout the day. And there's just this, it's just one thing after another pinball effect of like the things let me read you what I wrote down, which is action, clarity, discipline, urgency, confusion, pleasure, aggressive. I don't even know what I wrote here. I keep thinking about how the moon, like, yeah, I could look at all these things, like the moon trines Mars, but it conjoins Saturn. It's like, what do I need to do? And then it conjoins the North Node, which is like, I want to pursue this. And then it conjoins Venus retrograde. It's like, but I don't know how. And it conjoins Neptune, where it's like, I'm lost. And then the moon goes into Aries, where it's like, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway. But then it conjoins Mercury retrograde, where it's like, I don't need a plan. It's a really turbulent day. And I would argue that the way that you start the day is not the way that you end the day, or at least how you feel as you start the day is not how you will feel by the day's end. I think there is a lot of, it reminds me of when you are dreaming, or let's say in a movie, you often see a character, and I think of like Hot Rod, even though Hot Rod's the worst example of this, but a character gets knocked out, and they have a vision, they have an out of body experience. And in that out of body experience, or in that vision, they have this overwhelming emotional conflict that then they solve, and then they jump back into the body and they change their life, or they change something about what they're doing. That's what Friday is. Like, I kind of look at Friday, I'm like, you know, there's no technical highlight this day because it's just the lunar transits, but like, god damn, that's, and then because again, when the moon enters Aries, it is now like eclipse time. And it's going to conjoin Mercury retrograde, which is just kind of like, you know what, fuck it, we're going to change this. You know what, fuck it, we're going to do this. We're going to call an audible. So Friday seems really incredible, in my opinion. So then we get to Saturday. We have the partial solar eclipse in Aries. The moon, while it's in Aries, after the eclipse, will sextile Jupiter. And then we'll have Mercury retrogress back into Pisces and conjoin Neptune. Okay. Lot to discuss here. Because on one end, I don't really look at this that much as an eclipse. Like, I'm going to pull this up just to ensure myself, but if you go to timeanddate.com, which, Parker, I'm going to have you do this solar eclipse on March, is it 29th? Oh my gosh, that is the 29th. My community is having a yard sale on that eclipse. That's interesting. Look, if like, you know, I'll have Parker pull up timeanddate.com and throw up the map on here, but it's a partial solar eclipse, and it's only really going to be visible like in the Hudson Bay in Canada. It's really not going over any inhabited parts of the world. People are like, oh my God, people live up there. And like, it's going to be kind of partially visible in Europe. But I say this because it's also kind of far. It's about like 13, 14 degrees away from the nodes. It's pretty far. And I say that also because I would argue I would say that this is an incredibly spicy new moon, or a diet eclipse, where I don't think this is going to feel as emergency. I don't think it's going to feel as panicky. I have a lot of people in my life that reached out to me during the lunar eclipse in Virgo that they're not really that into astrology, but they were like, what the fuck is going on? Which is always really funny because I'm like, oh, it's eclipses. This is the time to feel like that. But this is the sign, again, we're in the spring now. This is the sign of beginnings. This is the sign of starting. This is the sign of initiating. Saturn's about to go in there. Neptune's about to go in there. We just got done with these Venus and Mercury retrogrades. Since summer of 2023, we've had eclipses in this area. So since summer of 2023, there's been this really big charge up in this area. I mean, we can even go back to May of 2022 when Jupiter entered Aries and Mars conjoined Jupiter in Aries, which that to me was like kind of like the really big one, like the really big seed being planted in this area. And then throughout 2023 and 2024, the North Node was there. It was like, turn this up, turn this up, turn this up, turn this up. Now that's done. And now we're about to have a whole new phase of whatever area of our life Aries rules over. This is kind of like the, okay, last chance. What do you want this to look like? Last chance, what are we doing here? Last chance, what needs to happen? What needs to get gutted? Or what needs to just where do you need to throw a Hail Mary? Like I put down, what needs to begin? What needs to start? And this is, I'm going to talk about this on the next day, but about a lot of Neptune and Aries stuff is, I wrote an email about this, which maybe by the time you watch this, I can get it set up to where if you subscribe to my newsletter, we'll send you the Neptune and Aries email if you haven't gotten it. But like, here's the deal. I have to do myself, I have to be, it's incredibly challenging to talk about what I want to talk about without opening up a bigger can of worms, which is since the liberal new world order of post-World War II, rules-based society, rules-based international law, that is one of the first times in human history where war was looked at as this, we changed our human look at war. in a way that today, if you are 20 to 30 years old, you have a, like, I always like when people go like, war is never the answer. It's so funny to me. It's like, if you actually look throughout all of history, war was literally the answer. And that's actually really important to understand how important war is and why it's worth what it is versus when it's not worth what it is. And I'm saying all that to say, not so like I'm supporting war in the moment, but what I'm saying is, because of that, you had warrior societies like in Japan, and you had like the samurai. You had the Romans who took over the fucking world. They were one of the most, crazy armies. They'd have these triumphs, and societies glorified this stuff. And why I'm bringing all this up is we're not in a Neptune and Pisces world anymore of, oh, do deeper internal work. It's really about like, the time to take action is now or you die. When the Americans, when the colonizers or the pilgrims, whatever you want to call them, came to the Americas and they went into the Western frontier, the reason why Americans are so fucking hard and badass is because these were regular people, regular families had to go to the Western frontier and deal with life and death situations every fucking day. There wasn't a, like clean water to just like find. There was, again, Native Americans, which also too, like, tried to kill them. They weren't just like saying, oh my God, we love everybody. It was a very hostile environment. And I'm bringing this up because we live in this very pacified world in which that has been taken away from us. And that's a very important part about being a human being, is understanding what it means to take action, what it means to actually like metaphorically kill the enemy, or metaphorically kill go for the hunt. Does that make sense? Like, a lot of you, if you were stranded out in the wilderness, would you actually be able to kill a mammal to eat and survive? Have you seen that level of number one, do you even believe you're capable of doing it? But number two, have you even seen that before? Can you handle the visual around that? And I say all that to say, what the future looks like is glorifying, romanticizing, and idealizing action. And that can even include things like violence. Now, when I say violence, there's a spectrum of that, right? There's going to be a lot of war stuff. And I've been trying to tell you guys, you're going to get propagandized into a war. Give it 5 more minutes. My prediction is when Venus leaves shadow in May, that's going to be some false flag in Europe. And they're going to be like, oh my God, it's going to be in May, in my opinion. Oh my God, we need to go to war with Russia. And you're going to be, and by the way, there's it's a pointless fucking war. And yes, even to the Europeans that think it's not a pointless war, you're absolutely wrong. So with that being said, there's the war part, but there's just, we live inside of our heads all day. We with Neptune and Pisces, in the email I wrote, like, if you haven't been diagnosed with a mental health illness, if you haven't had a sobriety stint, if you haven't done ayahuasca, if you haven't, read your tarot cards or it's like all of this spiritual mental stuff that, like, it's time to step away from that. It's time to take aggressive action. And there's a beauty, it reminds me of being in a trance state. I talk a lot about like riding motocross. And when you ride motocross, when you're on a track, you get into a trance state. But you're kind of doing one of the most extreme sports you can do, which is flying on a machine going 40, 50 miles an hour, jumping in the air, and you can die. But you become in this trance state. And that's what I think about Neptune and Aries. Think about runners who get that runner's high, and they become, it becomes a spiritual experience. It's an out-of-body experience. I want you to apply that with your lives. That's really what Neptune in Aries is going to be. In a way that I think is going to be incredibly enriching. When we talk about this partial solar eclipse in Aries, this is like, you've got to do it. There's no, for example, if you are, let's say, would you, if it was a life and death situation, would you hesitate? And a lot of you say, no, I wouldn't, but you would look at a lot of people who've had life and death situations, and there are times where they hesitate. If you have a gun and let's say a man is chasing you with a really big knife and you don't want to shoot this person, I mean, I think the FBI statistics are like within 21 feet, a person with a knife can kill you within like 3 seconds, or like less than a second or something like that. Would you hesitate to shoot them? And this is just an analogy, okay? Let's calm down. But I say that because, like, you have to be able to take decisive, immediate action with clarity, with trust, and not confuse yourself over it. And I think this partial solar eclipse in Aries is like, what are you attacking? What are you initiating? What needs to start and what needs to begin? Because the moon is going to sextile Jupiter immediately after that. Good. But then Mercury, while it's retrograde is going to go back into Pisces and can join Neptune. It's almost really funny how it's like eclipse in Aries. You need to take action. Something needs to start. What do you need to begin? Even if it's just ceremonious, doesn't have to need to be anything physical. And then Mercury retrogresses back into Pisces. So like, let's say, you are like, if like, let's say, again, because most of my audience is women, let's say you have like a handgun and you're at an ATM and some big guy with a big knife starts chasing you, attacking you, shoot him. You're then going to like, because you were now, number one, a victim of a crime. And number two, you just had to use like force and you just kind of killed someone possibly. Your brain goes into a very weird state after a traumatic event. And it becomes very confusing. And this is why there are certain times where like people who have to, like witnesses that have to recall situations, they may not recall it clearly because you've got adrenaline pumping through your veins. You've got all these other things that are distorting your view of what happened. That's like Mercury retrogressing back into Pisces and conjoining Neptune. It's like, what just happened? And there's this confusion. Or like, for example, if you've ever been into a car accident, or if you've ever been, again, like I've gotten the shit knocked out of me a few times from both like bikes. Like one time when I was a really little kid, I was like in third grade. I smacked my face on the concrete so hard, my sister thought I died. And I woke up to the hospital and I don't remember anything. I remember waking up in the hospital and not recognizing who my sister was. I recognized my parents, but I did not recognize my sister. And so after this eclipse, it's like, it's just like something just bangs, goes off. And then you're in that trance state. You're in that what's going on state. And that happens on Saturday. Now we get to Sunday. The moon is going to make a square to Mars. Neptune's going to go into Aries, and then the moon will ingress into Taurus and square Pluto. Number one, moon is in Aries. It's going to square Mars in Cancer. There's this things not being aligned with how we feel versus what we need to take action on. And Neptune going into Aries is like, look, I don't necessarily know or think or believe that something exactly on this day is going to happen to you in this big way. Because how the outer planets work is that they're bigger, long-term streams. For example, the moon is the localized weather. Like I live in Las Vegas. The localized weather is the moon. Things like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto are like the jet stream or like El Nino or La Nina. Like these, like they're not going to affect your day to day. They kind of do, but it's not like all of a sudden El Nino kicks on and then all of a sudden it's just drenching rain where you're at. That's how the outer planets work. So you're not really going to see this immediately. You might wake up today and just be on a sick one. But it's a change in ideals. And what you're going to see, and again, I think a lot of the Trump election was society rejecting a lot of Piscean stuff. Because again, something I think I'm going to talk about in my Neptune in Aries video is how a lot of Neptune in Pisces was how to be a good person. And there was a lot of distorted realities around that. And I think people are rejecting that in a lot of ways. And they're rejecting how to be a good person, but they're rejecting the, again, like one of the things I said is, like Neptune and Pisces reminds me of like inclusive safe spaces. And I feel like that term is very Piscean. It can come from a very good heart. Like I think people who want to do these things have come from a very honest place, but the means or again, it's the same thing as like communism. Communism is a great idea until you realize, oh, it's just about starving people to death essentially. And then like total power at the top and whatever. So I say all that to say, I'm not really that concerned about Neptune moving into Aries that day. I think as time goes on, you'll see it more and more. And I think you'll really see Neptune in Aries when Saturn goes into Aries. Because if Neptune's about illusion and fantasy and mysticism, then Saturn's going to come crashing in there. And that's about reality. And I think in May is when we really know what Neptune in Aries is. But here's the deal. Neptune in Aries is going to be, for example, let's say you've got to run, like this is a fight or flight thing. Are you going to, not even fight or flight thing, but like are you going to be a deer in the headlights? Are you going to know that you need to take action and panic? Or are you going to take action and not think about it? Are you going to get wrapped up in your head? Are you going to pretend to be confused about what it is next that you need to do? Because again, a lot of Neptune in Aries is like, it reminds me of, it almost reminds me of like, you know how like they gave meth to the Nazis. And I just kind of think of like, you know, we look back at that as like, that's so silly. But that's so crazy as well. Like, I mean, heaven, I mean, the same thing as like it reminds me of the imperialist Japan. You know, you look at how the Japanese soldiers fought in World War II. It wasn't because here's the thing: as Americans, as Westerners, we have killed a lot of peoples and ideas that wars meant something. You have to understand, like the like imperialist Japan is it wasn't about, oh, we're just gonna go to war and kill. It was about honor. It was about your family. It was about if your family will survive. It was about, again, and again, they live in an honor-based society. They live in a shame-based society, and this is why they kill themselves if they return back to war rather than dying in war, because that was looked at as more honorable. And so I say that because, like, you have to understand when you have like millions of people underneath the spell of that, you get people who are in a war for very different reasons. On my March game plan, in fact, I wish I could put it here because I was going to say, Parker, you should put this here, but I want you to look up the Key and Peele skit of the boxers. There's a Key and Peele skit of MMA fighters, and I always forget which one is which, but one of them is like, yeah, I'm going to beat this guy up. And the other guy's like, God has given me the ordained right to deliver God's message to this person by putting him to his death. And like, those are different realities to live in. This isn't a time of, oh, I'm going to take action. This is, you need to understand right now that your actions, look how much in the world has changed in the past 20 years. You don't think the next 20 years are going to upend what it even means to be a human being? You don't think the next 20 years are going to upend the capitalist structure of the world that we have lived in since the Industrial Revolution? You don't think that's going to get upended? You don't think everything in your world is going to completely change the next 10 years, let alone the next 5, especially as we go through a global war? Why I'm saying all this is to say, there's never been a better time to take action. In fact, this is the time to take action. What do you want your life to look like on the other side of all of this? On the other side of the war, on the other side of the global realignment? Because this is the time right now. And I really look at, it's not about, oh, take action, be motivated. This is, you need to listen to God, and you need to trust God, and you need to let him take over and let Jesus take the wheel. And I mean that in a literal way. Now, if you don't like that message, that's fine. You need to figure out how that applies to you. And what I mean by that is, this isn't a, oh, I'm really excited about this. You have to really let go of yourself and say, what do I need to be doing? What is the actions that I need to take that if I don't take and I get on my deathbed, I will regret not taking? And that fear is no longer an obstacle or an object that exists in my mind, because that's not what this is for. Like World War II soldiers, they didn't get to be afraid. Like they were probably afraid, but they didn't get to go, well, I'm a little scared. I'm like, no, you had to go in there. Sure, be afraid, but the fear will kill you. Literally, this is what I think is funny about fear killing people, because if you actually put that to the most extreme, it's real. If you are a frontline soldier and you're afraid, that will actually kill you more than anything else, because you will hesitate. You will hesitate. What is hesitation? It's not Aries. It's not action. And I think with Neptune and Aries, there's just you will pretend to be confused as if you don't know what to do. You will, again, and I think the other part of this too is, my only other thing about Neptune and Aries is, please do not be psyoped into taking actions that you wouldn't take if you didn't know things were going on. What I mean by that is, we're going into a global war, and they are going to want to motivate you to do something about it rather than them. And what is them? It's the politicians, bankers, corporations, people that are actually going to be profiting off of this, that their lives are only going to get enhanced when millions of people die, but not you. So be very careful about what you're doing and why you're doing it. You are going to become a soldier and a warrior, whether you like it or not. But my argument is, you should be a warrior in your own life. You should be fighting for what it is. Like, as time goes on, you will realize that there's going to be more and more things put in your path that are going to make you feel like you can only go so far. And I want you to know that you can go as far as you want to, but that's a war. There's no like, oh, if you just try really hard to get there. You're going to have to fight for where you want to go. You're going to have to fight for it. And it's the fight and the meaning and the significance that you put into the fight. Because it's not about, oh, I want this. It's about proving to yourself, and it's not even proving to yourself. It's that it's like you know your own capabilities and your strengths in your heart of hearts, and allowing that to freely come come to you, I think is going to be a part of Neptune and Aries. And the most magical part of it is knowing what your capabilities are and letting it come out. And so when it comes to fighting your own war, of going where you want to go and doing what you want to do, it's not even about like, oh, this is what I want to do. It's about unleashing your true potential, and that coming through a fight that is greater than, oh, I just want to make more money, or, oh, I just, want to live somewhere else. It's a divine message. So I could keep ranting on that. The moon will go into Taurus, whatever. Neptune's in Aries now. Next week, Venus will conjoin the North Node. Mercury will conjoin the North Node. They'll both still be retrograde. We're going to have Mars trine Saturn, and we're going to have Venus trine Mars. So I'm going to leave you guys off with that message, and I will be talking more about this as Neptune goes into Aries. But like I said, I'm promoting my game plan, my March game plan video a lot in as I have recently, but it's for a reason. It's not like just like for sales. It's like I'm not here to just be like, oh, here's what's going on March. Is you have an opportunity to change your life, and I feel as if my job is to remind you that that's always there and that that's ever present. So anyway, I'm gonna leave you guys off with that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you guys next week.